There's a black ops location that's down in Richmond, near Richmond, Virginia, where it's a driving school. It's a driving school for learning how to drive offensively in really weird locations around the world. About 15 years ago, myself, a group of folks I was working with at Mantech doing Title 10, Title 50 style work. And we were asked to go down there because we are going to be asked to deploy to Afghanistan to help out with information operations, help out with digital forensics collections, and more. Now, one of the things they wanted to teach us how to do is particularly understand when driving at 80 miles an hour, if something pops up in front of you, how to react to it. Now, how they taught us to do this was pretty amazing. We're driving in this car with the instructor on our right. They had this thing that's equivalent to the Star Wars blast shield that would be covering your face and you can't see what's in front of you. And the instructor with his hand on the wheel had their own gas pedal. And they would accelerate to about 80 miles an hour, running you down this runway strip in which they would then drop the shield and you have to react to what's in front of you, which is a bunch of cones and other things and hay barrels and, you can imagine. So my friend, Henry Van Gothen, went first. And I was like, okay, I can't wait to see this happen. And I'm sitting in the back, the instructor's accelerate 80 miles an hour, drops the shield, Henry looks in front of him, dodges everything, literally drifts around the hay barrels, and it made it look easy. So I get up there, I'm like, all right, let me try. They accelerate to about 80 miles an hour, drop the shield. And Henry makes a comment after I'm done. He said, do you want to drive back and get the cone you missed? And I kept on trying this, and apparently I'm a really bad driver. But the instructor, every single time, I'm like hitting the hay barrels, cones flying everywhere. The shield drops, and I could never quite get it. And the instructor said, what you're doing here is you get locked onto the thing that's in front of you, and you plow right through it. You need to look where it's empty space, whether it's driving on dirt, whether it's looking where the cones are, you're looking where the safe space is. And this is where the initial concept of this talk lies, is that despite how fast we're going right now in AI, the blast shield's dropping in front of you, and what you're doing is having a challenge potentially reacting to the things that are happening on a weekly basis. So everyone in here is a very busy executive-style individual. Most of you, when you look at this list up there, says a lot of these things I really have to focus in on. You're getting to bed on time, putting your devices down, eating properly, and probably one of the most important things is exercise. When you're exercising, one of the things that you potentially might need is a personal trainer. And that personal trainer is there for accountability, to make sure you get it done, to make sure you show up. Otherwise, a lot of us simply just skip this. The last one on there, which I've added now, is AI. So if you intend to be healthy, you need to focus in on now 4 things. Sleep, probably the most important. Diet, number 2. Getting your workout in at least 3 or 4 times a week. And AI on a daily basis, 30 minutes a day. I'm going to go to the past, explain why I think this, jump into the present, and then discuss what we're going to see here in the future. So number 1, going back to 1993. It's like back in time. By the way, this is the same delta that Back to the Future was when it came out, and where they're jumping back to. That's how long ago this was now. 30 years when you end up taking a look at the total time frame. Same time jump, by the way, when you're looking at Back to the Future, where Marty jumped back to. 1993, the internet didn't really exist as we know it. Most of us out there were probably in our teenage years. We're going through grade school. A lot of you in here, I'll go ahead and say, based on the youth, you may not have even been born yet. The key here is that when you end up thinking about the implications of the release of the internet, wide-scale adoption, most individuals could not predict the way this was going to affect them. What is really surprising is that AT&T did a series of commercials back in 1993. And the reason I remember these was because my classmate here, Patrick Sheridan, and I were in a business thing where we're back in Georgetown back in 2007, and we're trying to figure out which telecom company had the most effect on the future and the present. And we found these commercials. So I remember these commercials as it directly applies to AI. So what I'm going to do is you have to step back in 1993 and remember, you don't even know what email is. You've never seen a web browser before. You might have a personal PC and do some gaming on it, word processing, maybe some Excel, but that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and play these.
Have you ever borrowed a book from thousands of miles away, across the country, without stopping for directions, or sent someone a fax from the beach? You will, and the company that'll bring it to you. Have you ever paid a toll without slowing down? Bought concert tickets from a cash machine?
Yeah, perfect.
You will, and the company that'll bring it to you.
This last one's my favorite.
Have you ever watched the movie you wanted to, the minute you wanted to?
I mean, that last one especially, you were going to Blockbuster, and they had a flat screen TV on the wall, and they were thinking about that's the future of Netflix, which really didn't come out until streaming stuff until 2007, 2008. Literally 15 years. If you're seeing these commercials and thinking, and tablet on a beach and doing remote work, AT&T had about 20 of these commercials. Nationwide rollout. And if you're looking at these, you're thinking, oh, that's like Star Trek communicators. None of you had mobile devices. None of you had cell phones. None of you had the real, true impact of what was headed your way in the next 5 years. Jumping to 1996, something that educated myself, a lot of my colleagues in information operations. That is Alvin Toffler. And Alvin Toffler is one of these seminal, prescient individuals. If you've never read his books, I highly recommend it. His books, drafted in 1970 and 1980, were basically aimed at predicting the impact on society of what artificial intelligence and what the personal computer would do. There are several takeaways that he ended up having, and one of the key ones that he had is that this quote, man, and again, go back to when these are written, sorry about this, man has a limited biological capacity for change. When this capacity is overwhelmed, you're in future shock. So what? When we end up taking a look at how society changes and what the impacts of these technological changes occur for mass society, not just those in here on the technical edge, society is going to go through an initial rejection. You're going to have the have and have-nots, and you're going to basically watch as things slow roll out because the implications of this technology are not going to be truly understood. We're jumping to 2023 and the massive understanding from the common individual out there in artificial intelligence. So when we end up taking a look at some of the individuals out there, what they have said, and Emad is one of the ones that really started to echo this down how big an impact artificial intelligence is going to have on society overall. Humanity is standing on the edge of the most transformative events in our history. In our history. And a lot of you may not believe that yet. You're thinking this is another tech stack. It's like cloud. It's like cell phones. It's like the iPhone. Hold my beer. What's going to come is nothing short of things that the world and history have not seen at this point. And I feel like a lot of people say that's a pretty extreme view of what artificial intelligence impact is, but those who are kind of on the edge with me will likely agree. One of the things out there, and if you're thinking about this, what is artificial impact on you directly? What are you doing to potentially understand its direct impact? You might be thinking, oh, well, it's a really cool search engine. But in reality, what's happening now, and it's being released, and what's going to occur over the next 6 months to a year, is being able to shorten time frame and be able to get work done in a more efficient mechanism, save time, and the skills you need to do this are simply limited by your creativity. To an extent, I've had this argument with several people that technical skills will be downgraded in a favor for artistic and creativity and problem solving in order to utilize AI in the most creative manner. Now, for those of you who are really trying to say, what's the impact that I have and how fast is this going on? How many folks have truly started to play around with OpenAI's release just about a week and a half ago of deep research? Two things. You need to go look at this now and start playing around with it. Number two, this is probably one of the more important releases next to ChatGPT's release that occurred 2 years ago. But what I mean by that, you start playing around with this is not anything short of a Gartner, Accenture level management consultant. You ask it a long-form question, and it will produce the most accurate 20-page industry-related information you have seen. And it costs $200 a month for you to access the pro version of this. And I'll say this in the previous slide, the cost of intelligence is plummeting to where what happened a week later is Perplexity came out with their free version of deep research, and there's a race on to potentially show how the initial agentic research capabilities out there are stepping on each other. I would guess in about a month or two, majority of these capabilities are going to be free and in the hands of every individual in here. I can't demonstrate this, and I wish I could, but when I've sent these reports to experts in the field, including legal teams, management consulting, those in venture capital, and I said, give me a question you think is hard to answer, and it is able to answer that question within 6 minutes. It is mind-blowing. And a lot of you out there are like missing this on a weekly basis because keeping track of AI is incredibly difficult. And now I'm not trying to shame you, saying, why aren't you paying attention? But I'm trying to say things are accelerating faster than we are currently able to comprehend. The so what? Everyone in here, there is no industry that is safe from the plummeting price of the cost of intelligence. And this is a key point. You do not need to pay for information any longer. You do not need to pay research analysts for this stuff. You are going to be able to access it now on your mobile device. Don't believe me? Go out to perplexity.ai. If you're a subscriber to that, they already have a deep research feature. You probably just haven't paid attention to it yet. More on this in a second. Toasters. I didn't come up with this analogy. I was listening to some podcast a week ago, and I was like, oh, that's a perfect analogy. How did the toaster come into existence? If you think about this, I usually in smaller groups go on a very discussion-based thing. You have to have several key things deployed first. Number one, you have to have a power source. Number two, you have to have electricity to the home. And number three, once that electricity is established, you must have someone think, you know what would be cool? I could plug this thing in the wall and it will toast my bread. Without the first two things in existence, and this is what's really relevant to those in here on the venture side trying to see what is going to happen in the next 2 years. We do not know what the toasters are at this point. All we're staring at is AI models, the LLMs, the ChatGPTs, the search engines, and agentic capabilities. Power, electrical, question mark. July 10th, 2008, and I'm going to be referencing my friend over here, Patrick Sheridan, on this. Patrick, you should know this date, because this is even more important. I'm not going to quiz you, just stare at this date. You know what this date is. What is it? No, it's a year after the iPhone release date, but it's tied to the iPhone release date. Probably more important than the iPhone release. And people don't realize it. I'll give you a hint. The App Store. It is why the iPhone really changed the community. Next date, 2 years later. And some folks out there are saying, what happened 2 years later? What is this big thing? Give you an example. Instagram is released. Instagram, 2 years after, it is the toaster. Without the App Store, no toaster. The only person I knew that kind of saw that in my business school class is sitting right there, created a company literally thinking that this was the path forward. Mobile device coding, software development, and I thought he was nuts. I was like, good luck with that. And his company has done exceedingly well at this point. Writing apps for the future, the toasters. Power plants, grids to home, toaster. AI, models, chatbots, agents, that's why you're here. It's up to you to think about what is coming, not just focusing on the thing that's in front of you, not just focusing on the cones that are showing up in front of you when you're looking at what the future is going to bring. Now let's talk about work. It's like, this is a cybersecurity thing. He's going to talk about cybersecurity at some point, right? 2023, we go back and take a look at the 3 crucial areas as it relates to cybersecurity development in companies currently. First is, and I've heard a lot of folks talk about this in the sessions earlier, the panels, the initial keynote, all of the above. One of the key things that cybersecurity companies are trying to do is enhance cybersecurity defense to make it cheaper, faster, increase velocity, and be able to be more effective at your jobs on a daily basis. The same happens on the offensive side. When you end up taking a look at the combination here, our adversaries, those in Iran, North Korea, Russia, are literally utilizing AI without any legal bounds, policy bounds, to try and figure out ways to enhance AI-based operations. My seat on the bus at the SANS Institute, one of the things that I regularly talk to those in the field that are responding to incidents on a daily basis. It used to take, and this isn't very public, it's not widely discussed, but it used to take about 3 months from initial intrusion for operational goals to be achieved. In the past few months, all my colleagues are saying it's now reduced to a week. The velocity of exploitation is increasing tenfold. When they finally solve the agentic offensive capability issue, you're going to have reasoning built into these models. It'll drop onto a network, and it will no longer take a week, but it will take seconds from initial intrusion to be able to hit what they want and achieve operational success. From the defensive side, your goal, if you choose to accept it, is to start creating cyber defenses that are able to meet the velocity of the adversaries. That's it. It's not just making your capabilities better, it's about meeting the speed and effectiveness of those who are attacking us. The AI attack surface, the models themselves, have their own area to worry about. It's another massive opportunity out there, as you'll realize here in a few minutes. There are not enough individuals and not enough companies focusing in on model implementation security, third-party app security than currently need to be. There needs to be a lot of investments in innovation surrounding these companies out there that are focused on AI model security for one core reason. Unlike ICS/OT, unlike any other part of information security, AI is touching every part of industry. You cannot argue with me in saying, throw out some person's job that AI is not going to affect. Therefore, if AI is touching everyone, the security of that AI is paramount to everyone. Much more than critical infrastructure, because that is touching power grid, electrical, healthcare. There are ICS SCADA nodes that are out there you're trying to protect, but it's very niche. And in fact, there's not a lot of companies out there, except my brother with the same name, Robert Imley, over at Dragos. Very few are taking that on, and from an investment perspective, it doesn't make sense. From an investment perspective for AI, securing those models and doing it correctly is a massive opportunity waiting to be untapped. The last one, and it's probably one of the more important things to talk about, is AI regulation and internal policy surrounding implementation of AI enhanced capabilities and AI implementations and models. Let me go through a couple examples here. DeepSeek, everyone loves talking about DeepSeek. Private, you're worried about the data sitting in China. You're worried about what the implications are. Ban DeepSeek from your organization. Well, guess what? DeepSeek, the open source model, was not ignored by those of us in the community. In fact, the exact opposite occurred. Microsoft, Amazon, the majority of cloud providers, the compute providers that are out there, rapidly adopted the DeepSeek R1 model because the training of it used to cost $360 million if you're using OpenAI's capability. That dropped in 3 days to a $6 million price tag. Every organization on the planet looked at that and said, we're in a race in the AI world. Those who will win are going to be able to achieve an implementation velocity, reduce costs, and be able to maintain profitability, if it's there, and increase revenue by adopting cheaper models. 1/6 the cost of what OpenAI was doing is what the DeepSeek R1 model was able to achieve. Now, you're going to be looking at this as, well, that's interesting. So why is this a concern for us? Number one, if you're not adopting the model, you're placing your business at risk. But if you do adopt the model, who is performing the security audit of it to make sure, not like Huawei, that they're embedding malicious circuits into telecommunication gear from the PRC and sending it to the West in hopes that everyone's going to drop it on their network. And it's one of the reasons they got banned from the EU and the US and most Western democracies, saying you can't sell here. How do we know DeepSeek doesn't have embedded code in there to do malicious-based activity? And for those who don't believe that's possible, how many crypto miners have been found in Hugging Face models in the past year? It's a good perplexity search. Go look at it. And these things have been sitting there for months, and no one noticed them. And yet you're implementing these on your own compute without anyone doing an audit of it or even knowing they exist altogether. You risk losing the fight by not implementing the model. Equally, you lose the fight by not performing a good security audit of these models. That's the opportunity for folks in here. If you're able to meet the audit speed that is necessary to say there's zero risk or limited risk in applying these cheaper and more powerful models, then you're able to potentially echo all these massive trillion-dollar industries that exist and be able to assure them that by securing the model, that you could implement them at a lightning speed approach like what happened with DeepSeek. A great perplexity search is list all the US-based companies, the major ones, that have implemented the DeepSeek R1 model into their infrastructure to date, and ask the date that it was announced. Less than 1 week after DeepSeek's open source model has been released. Counter to this, too, is the rest of the industry said, uh-oh, in order for us to maintain relevance, we should also potentially look at open sourcing our models. And this is, again, the massive debate that is currently going on in the model space, closed source versus open source. And a lot of people in the open source community also take issue with this. It says it's not truly open source because it's not open-weighted. They have no idea how they trained it. Interesting enough, DeepSeek's not showing their hand there either. Come back to that. Texas. DeepSeek is released, and Governor Abbott did what? What did he do in Texas? Someone just yell it out. Banned it. But what did he ban? There's a single word in that law, just DeepSeek. The model, the app, this is where laws and regulations start to conflict with what individuals may or may not be acting on as fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which we all know about. Why this affects you in the cybersecurity community is that when we end up doing an outright ban on technologies that are not fully understand, it potentially impacts investment into innovation. You're like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? How many companies have announced their move from California to Texas because of the lack of regulation compared to what they're seeing in California today? A ton. And when you have Governor Abbott come out there and say, ban DeepSeek, when you have the entire industry rushing to implement the R1 model, do you think a lot of these organizations took a step back and said, uh-oh, let's reconsider our options for where we're going to move our headquarters of our company from a taxation regulatory base in the United States. This is a crucial discussion. If leadership, executives, are blindly acting on lack of understanding, they're not able to make executive decisions on the path forward. Meaning there needs to be a baseline education that's involved so executives can make these correct decisions without just simply implementing what is based on the news. Shadow AI is another example. Now, you may have never heard this term before, but organizations that have a stricter policy on AI implementations have this thing called shadow AI. Shadow AI is employees that are secretly using AI behind the policy, and they're becoming really good at it. But because they're fearing that their jobs are going to be replaced because they find out that, hey, what I'm doing, the AI is doing it better than I am. All they're doing is leveraging their creativity and increasing their efficiency so it reduces costs so one employee can do the job of 10. We know this, but they're doing it secretly now, not sharing what they're doing. The organization not understanding how to potentially balance security and innovation is kind of left this, we don't understand it, ban it. And that's what IT security teams are advising security staff, or excuse me, advising executives, saying we are not sure how to protect this. I would limit utilization. Organizations that are limiting your employees from this innovation in a safe, secure manner risk the business in the next 2 to 3 years. You think Blockbuster disappeared fast and Kmart and Sears, organizations not truly trying to balance security and innovation and doing it in an open way in their organizations are risking their entire business. Again, opportunity for the individuals in here. So what? The cybersecurity risks are not that different to the business risks when it comes to AI. And again, and this is one of the most important things that affects everyone in here, there cannot be informed debates about AI if most people do not understand the basics. Governor Abbott, as well as the technology implementation security teams that are inside your organizations, advising the CISOs, who are advising the executives, who are advising the board on here's our path forward. Everyone needs to AI daily, like a workout. Toffler says, our technological powers increase, but the side effects and potential hazards also increase. The speed of having to make the correct decision, the blast shield dropping in front of you, so you're seeing the cones and knowing where to go, that is now happening at a micro level. Implementing a model like DeepSeek R1 is being implemented currently at a faster rate than any other technology that we've ever seen before. Again, when you're out there from the cybersecurity community looking for startups, opportunity. Meeting the speed and velocity of decision-making of executives to be able to implement correct decision-making so it keeps the business afloat, revenue generating, and more. You need to understand the AI. Now, here's probably the most prescient point that's out there. And again, this is from Parks and Rec. I love this quote, by the way. I'll read it to you. I'm gonna tell you a secret about everyone else's job. No one knows what they're doing. Deep down, everyone's just faking it until they figure it out. And you will too, because you're awesome, and everyone else sucks. The point is, everyone is struggling to keep up with this stuff. And I fully admit this. On a daily basis, I feel completely overwhelmed on what all this stuff means. Watching the regulatory stuff, watching the business implications, keeping up with the different models, learning how to code in AI. All these things weigh on me, where I'm literally watching Instagram educational feeds and saying you too can code by having a dialogue with your AI, creating a PRD, dropping it into Lovable.ai, and it creates an app just on a 5-minute conversation I had with it, and I haven't coded in 20 years. And then from a business perspective, you know, when I'm looking at Pat and his business out there, what about his impact on what Modus is going to be doing? Do they need coders, or do they need people with creative skills able to describe an app that's going to be impactful at a rapid rate and do it 10x over what they did before? Your job is hard. Your job is also super important. And if you don't know this stuff, It's totally cool. You got to understand, everyone in here is currently faking it when they're talking about AI. A lot of you are like, no, I'm a scientist, I actually know pretty well about it. True, but do you know the business side? Do you know the legal implications of these decisions? Another case in point for the legal implications. Most nation states' legal creation of policy and laws regarding this are excluding one key point. And I do this, and this is a part of the RSA talk I'm going to be giving as my keynote there on the main stage. It is now a passion of mine to educate regulatory and lawmakers, here in DC especially. Back when the internet became a thing, the entire information security, cybersecurity community was born out of literally one initial product: intrusion detection systems. The only reason IDS systems were able to be created is that there was an exception written in the telecommunication law from 1960s that allowed for providers to be able to wiretap their own systems to be able to secure and ensure reliable data. Without that, plugging in something to sniff your network like they did in the cuckoo's egg would not be allowed. You would be violating the law and committing a felony. What is the cybersecurity exception written into the current AI laws that are out there? I'm now lobbying a lot for this, is that cybersecurity needs an exception in these policies that organizations that are doing it from a security and reliability stance and not selling it, not transmitting it, are given an exception to utilize AI to its full capacity and capabilities to monitor what people are doing on their networks without running afoul of the law. Currently, if you're an investor out there, you need to be looking at this because your investment strategy is based off of nothing changing in the regulatory environment. I'll give you an example. Everyone out there who bought a place in hopes that Airbnb was going to be a sustainable business model for many years to come found out that all that local regulatory commissions and city councils needed to do is change the algorithm to saying short-term rentals are now banned. And the entire industry was shaking at that point. One law change changes your entire investment down through the floor. Making sure these laws protect your investments and protect the community is paramount. But a question, and this is probably the most important question out there: are you currently faking about your current knowledge of AI? I'll raise my hand on this. It's like I get into conversations and I'm like, okay, I think I know the answer, but I'm constantly also trying to echo back. It's like, I'm kind of new to this. I am new to this. I have only been studying AI for about a couple years now with one of my close business partners who basically became my personal trainer and accountability partner, who keeps on pushing me on a weekly basis to say, have you looked at this? What about this? Have you listened to this podcast? I do the same back to her, consistently executing and trying to increase our knowledge, because both of us, even if she was up here on the stage, she's like, I know nothing about this. But it's consistent learning on a daily basis. Because I'm not exaggerating when I say this. If you're not learning AI, your business depends on you learning this stuff, not outsourcing it to another individual. Your business decisions, the ability to execute as an executive, as a part of the board, as an innovation investor, is dependent on you understanding it, not to a data scientist level, but just from an implication level. Like, what does Wi-Fi in the middle of Starbucks mean? It became, hey, this is where we hang out. What does the constant increasing of bandwidth mean? Well, we could deliver movies to your home whenever you want it. The implications of this and understanding what the technology is going to drive forward and determine what the toaster is what the point is. And you can't look to others and saying, what do you think? As an executive, you're the one that's driving the wheel when the blast shield drops. And it's important for you to think about this. But even more important from a cybersecurity standpoint, it's not the US military that's going to be protecting the country when bad things happen. Whether you realize it or not, every organization out there is the actual front lines when it comes to a future cyber war. Financial, healthcare, critical infrastructure, power, food delivery, your grocery store, if they can't, resupply. You saw this in the car industry this past summer. They couldn't register their vehicles. They had to go back to pen and paper. The entire tax of vehicles in states was in jeopardy because a single ransomware attack took off the binding network that had connected all the finances of all these dealerships. And they were rushing. It's because they thought it would only take 3 days to get back up online, and it took 3 weeks. Had to go to pen and paper within a week, having individuals rush over to register the cars and vehicles, and you can see what I'm getting here. Every industry is now the front line in any pending cyber war, meaning, going next page, people's lives depend on you learning this stuff. Everyone's like, well, that's kind of extreme. I don't really think so. Do you think the US military is able to defend your network? They're defending theirs. They're able to do offensive stuff because of Title 10, Title 50, but who's protecting you to make sure your stuff doesn't fall over like Jenga? Your stuff needs to be up, reliable, and again, why cybersecurity industry is still exploding is because the front line exists now deep into the heart of every industry that's out there. So when you talk about thinking through the future here and what you're going to be required to do, is you need to be able to drop the blast shield and be able to see the cones in front of you, make decisions. Now, not in months, not to let's do a Gartner analysis and be able to figure out what the right decision is going to be. DeepSeek implementation, you see how fast that happened. Your business survival, in addition to weighing the security risks, are going to be based off of the ability for you to understand it's no longer anticipate or perish. It is truly AI or die. And I'm not the one who coined that. Google's former CEO, Eric Schmidt, in multiple interviews, is saying this to every organization that's out there. AI or die, and you should put it on a t-shirt. You should have this stuck on your monitor to always remind yourselves, what are you doing next to learn and educate yourself? Going back to Alvin Toffler, this is my favorite quote, and the entire reason I included his reference in the material. I wanted this slide. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. For those of you saying, hey, I don't need to learn anything anymore, buckle up. There is no book, there is no amount of individuals you could go tap into out there that is going to meet the velocity of the understanding of the market, the community, capabilities, and decisions that need to occur for AI. Going back to how do we potentially help? You need to learn AI daily. So one of the things, and again, I'm going to throw it up there because I think a lot of us need help. I need help. The question comes to how. Now I'm going to throw up one of the things that Pat and I have been actually talking about is that you need a personal trainer as well. Everyone needs a personal trainer. One of the things that I'd recommend is you could go out there. There's a daily podcast called the AI Daily Brief. AI Daily Brief. I would recommend, it's a 10-minute podcast. It's all the latest headlines regarding AI. Legal, business, implications, what is the technology? You would be all over deep research if you're listening to this podcast on a daily basis. But I also want to recommend my friend who's also doing a startup, by the way. That's her. She's way more knowledgeable than I am, and she's running the AI Cybersecurity Summit in Denver in about 3 or 4 weeks, March 31st, April 1st timeframe. We're bringing together folks who are in the community that are basically implementing AI for cybersecurity workflows, but our second day is focused on protecting AI models. Kate, who's referenced on the slide, is also starting to train executives to be able to make business decisions and capabilities to be able to absorb this. And I hate to make a pitch for her, but she's just starting out. She's a woman-owned business and not sure where to go from here other than she's working with my sister as her first individual. My sister is an executive at VMware, running northern sales for all of Europe and has a $3 billion bogey under her what she has to worry about. And what's interesting here is that she has no idea how to implement AI from a business transformation aspect. Kate's currently coaching her. And she's already come back to me because I can't coach her. You know how it is trying to coach family. It's a horror show. But when you end up coming down to it, you need that personal trainer. So going back to the main point here, here's my contact information in this QR code, is everyone in here needs to treat your long-term health with very serious implications if you do not sleep properly, eat properly, work out daily, and dedicate, and I'll initially say 15 minutes a day to learning AI, get it up to 30, then to 45 to an hour, spend core time on weekends. And to really challenge you in here, I would like everyone to be coding their first app in AI inside of 6 weeks. It can be done. I've shown it to other executives at the SANS Institute, where I work and we do cybersecurity education. And I said, everyone, I'd like you to do this. And I created a one-page document. Here's your idea, interact with the AI, create the PRD, drop that into Lovable or Cursor with 3 basic instructions. Here's how you implement it. And they were shocked, having no coding skills, what they were able to do with just their creativity. AI or die, folks.